Proposal models, why they were needed, and how they were used. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Celebrating Aviation with Mike Machat. We have something different. This is a preview of a new series that we're going to be bringing to the channel, live videos, coming soon in the next few weeks. We're going to be looking at factory proposal models. And I thought I'd use this evening's program to give you kind of a sneak preview of some of the topics we're going to be covering. The most obvious popular models made in factories in the olden days, 50s and 60s, were what I call travel agency models. A travel agency, for our younger viewers, is a place that you'd go to plan a trip on an airliner or an ocean liner or a cruise. And the travel agent would make all the arrangements, but to entice people to come in and book their trips, they'd have these stunning ship and aircraft models, many on floor stands, many are cutaways. And what we see here is a travel agency model of an American Boeing 707 Astrojet. This is a fiberglass model. It's about, I want to say about 4 feet long. It's made by the Topping Company. And the detail was pretty simple. It was very generic. There wasn't a lot of, controlled surface scoring and rivet patterns and things like that. This is the front of the model. You just see the basic radome windshield, just very, very generic. And just by comparison, for some perspective, compare that 4-foot travel agency model to this die-cast 1/200 scale similar 707 in American Airlines colors. This model, with all the detail you see here, is 9 inches long. Now, granted, this serves a different purpose. This is a collectible. They're displayed on bookshelves or on display cases. Totally different purpose, but just an example of how far the modeling art has come in 50 years or so. What we see here is a beautiful example of a factory model from Sud Aviation in France. The Caravelle was the world's first jetliner to have the engines mounted in the rear. First flew in 1957. And this is a wood model from the factory. The metal base has the winged griffin logo of the company. And again, very simple, no real detail, but just an elegant representation of the airplane in 3 dimensions. On the military side, these models were used for proposals, most of which never happened, but they were sent to the Pentagon or used for military brass corporate executives to show what a new design would look like. Here we have a North American interceptor concept. Again, never went into production, but a stunning and rare model. Here we have a Douglas mothership that carried a whole series of Parasite fighters and cruise missiles. Turboprop, twin contra-rotating propellers. Cold War. What can I say? The Cold War created the need for very novel weapon systems. This is one of them, and the models played a big role in conveying how these things were going to look. Here we have a Grumman model from the factory shop at Bethpage of a lift fan surveillance aircraft. And you look at that cockpit area, it's kind of reminiscent of the EA-6B Prowler. Here we have an F-89 Scorpion advanced version with giant rocket launching pods on the wing. Again, never went into production, but the model would show or convey the airframe shape and idea to prospective clients like the U.S. Air Force. I'd like to talk about the use of models in the development of an airliner, in this case, the McDonnell Douglas DC-10. Here we have an R.G. Smith painting of the CX. This is a proposal for the outsized cargo airplane in the mid-60s. Lockheed won this contract, and of course they produced the great C-5 Galaxy, which is still flying today in advanced versions. But Boeing and Douglas did not win the production contract. However, both companies gained valuable experience in large airframe methodology, construction methods, and the General Electric CF6 and Pratt & Whitney JT9 high bypass ratio engines. And so this was employed in the design of the Boeing 747. And for Douglas, the DC-10 started as a proposal to meet a design requirement from American Airlines. In 1965, American issued a request for a 250 passenger wide body airliner that could operate specifically from LaGuardia Airport, the smallest of the three New York airports. And the idea was to take 250 passengers from New York to Chicago, one of their main trunk routes. And United was use the airplane in a similar fashion from the West Coast, LA and San Francisco to Denver. But they suddenly realized in the original design, a twin engine wide body that you see here, very reminiscent of the Airbus A300 or even the 767. But those airplanes came 5-10 years later. This was kind of a pioneering step to have a wide body medium range jet. But American and United both realized, well, wait a minute, if we're carrying that many passengers 2/3 across the country, what would it take to have transcontinental range? And the answer was a third engine. So they used the model to develop the concept of adding a third engine to the tail. And what we see here was the original configuration of putting a CF6 on a pylon on the trailing edge of the tail. Well, it was a great idea. This is called the bifurcated intake. And in principle, it worked out okay, even in early wind tunnel testing. The problem was if there was any yaw component of the airplane or in a crosswind, you'd lose half the air intake into the engine. And so the solution was what they called the flow-through nacelle, which you see here on this Pacific Miniatures model. And of course, that was adapted for the production airplane along with a fuselage stretch. And that's why the DC-10 looks the way it does. A lot of models were contracted out to other companies as opposed to being done in-house. And the prime example is the Topping Model Company. Bill Topping started his model company in Elyria, Ohio. And in the 1950s, they were king of the hill. Topping produced literally hundreds of thousands of models of existing aircraft and proposal aircraft in some cases. They made models for Republic and Grumman, Lockheed, Boeing, any number of companies. And here we have a Martin Seamaster, the P6M jet bomber flying boat on a novel ocean plastic base. But the toppings, which are very collectible today on the hobby market, were just iconic examples of all the great airplanes that were built in the 20th century. In many cases, there would be a specific company that would be local to a manufacturer, and they would get a job such as this Lockheed AH-56 Cheyenne, which was built by the Parr Tool Company in Sun Valley, California, which was just up the road from Burbank. Now, here we have an interesting story. This is the alleged F-19 stealth fighter. And this model and this whole design, there was a series of artist renderings that made quite a big splash in the late 70s. And the purpose of this was to literally throw off any suspecting eyes or prying eyes or anyone suspecting what a stealth fighter was going to look like. And this design was developed as a decoy to allegedly look like what it was going to be. And it had nothing to do with stealth technology and the creation of Lockheed's first low observable stealth fighter, which of course was the F-117 Nighthawk, which you see here. It looks a bit different than that curvilinear model. I'd like to talk about going from a two-dimensional painting, two-dimensional piece of artwork, to a three-dimensional model, in this case, the Piaggio Douglas PD-808, which was a bizjet in the early 60s that Douglas was going to market in concert with the Italian company. But again, a whole different sense of what the airplane looks like in 3 dimensions. Douglas had an amazing model shop and also contracted out for these metal models. And these large scale 1/100 scale, 1/50 scale models were presented to chief pilots and airline executives at the rollout of a new jet like this United DC-855. But in many cases, the models were used to present those same airlines what their airplanes would look like if they were purchased. And in this case, United never went with the DC-9. They purchased the Sud Caravel that you saw earlier. But this was a proposal model for United's DC-9-10, which never happened. One thing that did happen was the DC-930, and this is a 10-foot long Uber display piece that was built in the model shop at Long Beach. You see it here on a table in the product display center. And it was a cutaway that showed every facet of the airplane: lavatories, cockpits, passenger seats, you name it. And it was quite a beautiful example of what the modeling art was in the mid-1960s. This airplane is the Republic XR-12. Republic was marketing an airliner version of this. This is a photo recon aircraft developed at the end of World War II. It was a piston-powered aircraft that flew at 400 miles an hour and 40,000-foot altitudes. And so Republic was pitching the idea to Pan Am and to American, which had provisional orders. Unfortunately, those were never carried through. The airplane was just too expensive at the end of the war. And so it never went into production as an airliner. But you see here a Pan Am model in a photo studio being shot for artists to use for their renderings. And this is a good example. Here's a KLM version of the Rainbow, as the XR-12 was called, an airline version, the RC2 Rainbow. And this model, this exact photo that you see here, was flopped or reversed 180 degrees. And the artist used that to create this airliner rendering, complete with jet-like contrails and spinning props. And you see how the model was used to create the image. As we looked at the painting going to a three-dimensional image, let's look at this three-view of the Republic F-105 and a Verkyle metal model made in Holland of the airplane. Again, you get a different sense of the shape looking at the model. This is a factory-built model with all the age aircraft ground equipment, and this was used as a maintenance training tool for maintenance personnel to learn about all the different ground equipment that they would use on the 105. This was transported to the training bases in a large suitcase. All the parts were secured inside, and it was, just as a product of that time period, the pinnacle of the use of the factory model. And finally, I'd like to end with this stunning, about 8-foot long Fairchild Republic A10. This is the two-seat night all-weather version. They built one of these airplanes. It's on display at a museum at Edwards Air Force Base today. But the A10 was a 1972 era aircraft built in Farmingdale, New York, and Hagerstown, Maryland. And this model is on display in the terminal building at Farmingdale at Republic Airport. It's a commuter terminal. But the model stands as a tribute to the great company, which operated there from 1939 until October of 1987. And a great example of the factory model shop craftsmanship, the artisans who worked on this and painted it. A real tribute to the level of expertise and excellence in the factory model shop. And as I said, we're going to be bringing you a live video series examining many of these factory models and telling the stories of the airplanes, and be watching for that in the next few weeks. So there you have it, an inside look at factory models. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for celebrating aviation with Mike Machat. I'd like to dedicate this presentation to the hard workers in factory model shops everywhere, and many are still in business to this day. Until next time, take care.